Hello and welcome to a PC building video. The goal with this build is to make a Windows 98 machine using parts from the early 2000s that are good enough for Windows XP while still somewhat compatible with some DOS games. This would allow me to play my favorite games from the early 1990s through the mid 2000s without needing the use of emulators. First off, I'm going to need something to put everything into. I've chosen this InWin C589 case because it has a lot of nice accessibility options for installing and swapping out parts easily. For the motherboard, I'm using this Asus P5N-D that sorta has the best of both worlds. It has an IDE connection, floppy, SATA, PCIe and PCI, but unfortunately doesn't have AGP. The back has a nice selection of I/O with PS2, printer, COM, FireWire, USB, and although I don't plan on using them, there's also Ethernet and sound. For the processor, I went with this Intel 2.8 GHz Core 2 Quad. This combination allows me to set the BIOS to a single core at 2 GHz for Windows 98 or 2.8 GHz quad core for Windows XP. For the CPU fan, I'll be using this Blue Orb 2, only because it's what I have available and already had the bracket installed on the motherboard. For RAM, I have these Kingston 2GB sticks. It will definitely be overkill and not necessary, especially if I use all four, but I'm hoping I can make some of it work mainly for Windows XP. As for sound, I plan on using this Creative Sound Blaster Live card. I thought it would be perfect since it's dated year 2000, which matches the era I'm trying to hit and has a 15-pin game port. Something that may not work with this motherboard is this TX 5¼ floppy drive. It matches the color I'm going for, but there's a pretty good chance it won't be compatible with what I'm doing. But I've decided to give it a try anyways. For the graphics card, I picked out this 128MB GeForce 6200 LE since it's the newest card I own that also had drivers for both Windows 98 and XP. For easily swappable storage options, I decided to go with this Compact Flash IDE adapter. I figured it would be perfect since it's connected with the IDE cable, and I also have access to the CF cards from the back of the computer. This helps me out tremendously when it comes to putting files on the CF card since I can remove it and connect it to a modern PC within seconds, especially since I don't plan on ever connecting to this machine to the internet. For the sake of a shorter video, I'm going to speed up a lot of the basic building processes, but I'll still slow things down when there's something of note. With that being said, here we have the installation of the CPU, RAM, thermal paste, and cooler. I then installed this ZooMax 550 power supply. It's a little old and used, but I want it mainly because it has more than one 4-pin floppy drive power connection. I'll need these to power the CF card adapter in addition to a floppy drive. I've already got the motherboard's I/O shield installed, so it's time to drop in the rest. While carefully bringing it in, I noticed that the Blue Orb cooler is way too big and is getting blocked by the power supply. This is no good and I need to replace the fan with something else. So I went online and bought a new CPU fan and swapped it out. Nice. Attempt number 2 went perfectly, I just needed to screw in the board to the existing standoffs in the case. For this next portion, I'm plugging in most of the ribbon cables for the parts that are going into this build. Continuing with the black theme of the case is this NEC 3.5-inch floppy drive from 2007. Next is this HP DVD 640 drive. I picked this up because it has pretty much every option including LightScribe. And then we have the TX 5¼ drive. Here is an example of where the case saves some time during the installation of the parts. So far, it's looking pretty good. Here I'm installing the graphics card and the CF card adapter. Turns out I ordered the wrong extension cable, so I'll have to get an IDE extension ordered before it can be properly installed. This next section is the sound card being installed. Moving along, I'm connecting all the power and ribbon cables to the drives. However, when I got to the floppy drive, it ended up being too short, so I used the extension cable that I accidentally got. I'm also going to need to figure out where the CF card adapter is going to go for now. Next is the front panel connections for power, reset, LEDs, internal speaker, and then USB. I didn't bother connecting the HD audio since I'll be using a sound card instead. Finally getting to the compact flash adapter. For storage I went with a 64GB SanDisk CF card. Cables are a bit messy at the moment, but I'll clean that all up once I get the IDE cable extension. Time to close it all up and turn it on for the first time. The CF card reader and floppy drives aren't showing up, only the DVD drive is, so I had to go back in and take a look inside and see what's going on. After trying a bunch of different combinations, flipping the cable orientations, and then removing the 5¼ inch floppy drive, I finally got the CF card reader working. It now reads all 3 currently plugged in devices. I think there might have been some sort of conflict with the 2 floppy drives and the motherboard not supporting more than one, I'm not sure. But I'm definitely keeping the 3½ inch drive since I'll need that for installing Windows 98. Now that the drives are being recognized, I can start installing the operating system. I've chosen Windows 98 2nd Edition. I didn't have a boot disk, so I had to download an image online and put it onto a floppy disk. This is where I format the drive and enable large disk support, as well as checking to make sure that the partition available was already set as active, followed by starting the Windows 98 installation process. Halfway through, the Windows 98 installation didn't like how much RAM I had. I removed 4 gigs of RAM to see if it would let me through, but nope, it was still too much RAM. Took out another stick, leaving only 2 GB total now, but it was still too much. Digging through my collection of RAM, I found some 512 sticks of RAM that should just do the trick. I can now finish the second half of the setup. I did check online and found out that Windows 98 has an artificial cap of 1 GB of RAM. There are ways to increase that, but I'm going to just leave the system the way it is since I've also read that having more than 1 gig can cause some problems with older applications and games. After days of building and troubleshooting, I finally have a fresh installation of Windows 98 SE. Now that Windows is up and running, I need to install drivers for everything else. I've decided to start with the graphics card. I found a driver pack that is supposed to be compatible with Windows 98 SE and the LE version of the 6200. However, every time I got to the installation part, it kept saying that the card's ID was not found in the INF file. After some more searching, I found an unofficial driver pack that forced the card to be found. And after restarting the PC, I just told it to find the driver files from the official driver extraction, and a couple of restarts later, it seemed to be working just fine. I'll leave a link to the unofficial drivers in the description for anyone interested in that. I got the replacement IDE extension cable in the mail, so I went ahead and installed that. Moving on to the sound card, I yet again ran into some issues. It didn't matter what drivers I used, every time I got to the Sound Blaster emulation part, I would get a blue screen of death. I tried several different sound cards and drivers, but nothing would install successfully. Then I tried this AudioPCI 5200 that has a Creative Ensoniq ES1373 chip on it, which apparently has a wide range of legacy compatible features for Soundscape, Sound Blaster Pro, MIDI, AdLib, and more. The only reason I even bought this card was because it was labeled on eBay as some generic sound card that came with a bunch of cables that I really wanted for cheap. To my surprise, it works. I went ahead and set the sound settings in the audioexec.bat file and enabled EMM386 in the config.sys file. This was needed for the DAW simulation using this card. Well, things seem to be in working order. The processor shows up as a Pentium 3 for some reason, it recognizes 1GB of RAM just fine, and the graphics card and its features seem to be working as well. So it's time to install some games. There are some games where I prefer using the PC speaker, as well as there being some games that only have a PC speaker as an option for sound, and while trying those out, I hated how this little beeper speaker sounded. I had this replacement HP laptop speaker lying around and decided to use it. I just needed to figure out how I was going to wire it all up. But first I wanted to hear how it was going to sound. I grabbed some wire and some JST cables, so I'm just going to hack together a few things and test it out and see how it sounds. Here's how the two speakers compare to each other using the opening to stunts. I found a nice place next to the power button to mount it, but I don't like this connector, so I'm going to redo the wiring. While working on this, I decided to add a potentiometer so I can adjust the volume of the speaker. That's something I never had growing up with old computers. It was either on or off. I drilled a hole in the second 3.5-inch bay cover and mounted the knob. I also set up the wiring so it can be easily removed if I needed to. I started running into more issues. This time it was games that don't run in true full screen mode. While playing, the screen will randomly go black for a couple seconds and then come back. If I ignore it long enough, the computer completely freezes. Not only that, but trying to shut down the computer doesn't work right either. I can restart the computer just fine, but when I try to shut down, it will either get stuck on this Windows protection error that doesn't do anything, or show this write fault error. I found a few posts online stating that newer NVIDIA graphics cards commonly cause these issues in Windows 98, so I decided to swap it out with this slightly older FX 5200. It also has 128MB of RAM, and is PCI instead of PCIe. Luckily, I didn't have to find another driver. The 81.98 Foursquare driver I was using before had everything I needed for this card. This fixed the black screens in games, as well as the shutdown problems. Next, I installed Windows XP on a separate CF card. There isn't anything special about it, I just ran the installation from the disk, so I didn't keep any of that footage. I did, however, run into another problem with my setup. XP can't save the paging file settings to a CF card. After searching online, I found out that this was caused by the CF card being recognized as a removable drive. and Windows XP not allowing the paging file to access that. To fix this problem, I ordered a 4GB micro SSD drive off eBay for about $5 and used that as a dedicated paging file. I didn't think about how I was going to mount it until after it arrived, but the area above the floppy drive seemed like a pretty good spot to put it. So I modeled a super simple mounting bracket and 3D printed it out. After formatting it, I mounted it in place. I just needed to plug it in and turn the computer back on. I've got the paging file all set up to run off the micro SSD drive, and everything seems to work just fine. And now to switch between the two systems, all I have to do is swap out the CF cards and I'm good to go. Now, what build would be complete without some case stickers? I'm not 100% sure, but I think this XP one is a legit Microsoft one, and this Windows 98 one is a recreation by Geekenspiel. I'll leave links to the XP sticker as well as Geekenspiel's eBay store page for those who are interested. I considered putting these on the top edge or on the side of the case, but because they're slightly different sizes, I decided to go with either side of the front so that it wouldn't be as noticeable. Well, if you've made it this far into the video, I thank you very much for watching. Thinking about this project a bit more, I probably should have stuck with two different systems, but I think I've made something very special here and I'm really enjoying it. The only thing left to do is use it. Please enjoy some clips of games running on this machine. Have a nice day.
Let's hurry, child. The night can only get worse, so we must find shelter soon. Don't worry. Explain everything as soon as there is time. Wait, there is something wrong. We are in an ambush.
You're perceptive for an old man. You know why I'm here. Hand over your ward and no one will be hurt. If you resist, it shall be a waste of your life.
You're a fool if you believe I would trust your benevolence. Step aside and you and your lackeys will be unhurt.
I am sorry that you feel that way, old man.
Get out of here!
Leaving so soon? Three, 2, 1, go!
Don't touch anything until told to. Hit the T key to target the container in front of you. Your targeting box will turn green to indicate a good shot. Report on primary target. Their hull is damaged. They've been destroyed. Fire at will to destroy target 1. Report on tertiary target. They've been destroyed.
Bandit, single fighter. He's in front of you, 12 o'clock high. Range 1 mile.